Hello and welcome to another Magic the Gathering video. Today I'm going to be looking at a White Weenie deck, specifically a White Weenie deck that uses commons only. So this is a Pauper deck. A while back I sort of got interested in Pauper, and that got further sort of developed when I read an article called Introduction to Pauper by Alex Allman on Star City Games, I think it was. And in that he outlined quite a few decks. I think there was about 8 or 9 decks, possibly even more, that were currently being played regularly within the sort of Pauper metagame at the time. So what I thought it'd be interesting to do at that time was to just put together a little box which contained about 4 Pauper decks in it. So basically I had a Storm deck, a Goblins, a Mono Black, and this White Weenie. So I thought it was about time that I did a little bit of sort of show and tell on the White Weenie deck, and maybe look at, you know, in as things have advanced on, what sort of cards we're now seeing swapped out in this deck. Now the article was originally based on playing Pauper on Magic the Gathering Online. So what's good about that as well is you can go to the daily Magic the Gathering Online Pauper results and actually see how this deck sort of changes over time. So just going through the deck, over here on this side we've got basically 21 planes. These planes I've drawn from Shards of Alara, and so I just laid them out so you can see the 4 different types of artwork there. So we've got a nice sort of desert scene. This is one that's a bit more, I suppose, pastoral. I should have maybe removed the deck protectors on these before I did this. These have come straight out the box basically. There's another one. And then finally the 4th piece of artwork that was used in the Shards of Alara planes. Here we go. Okay, so in this first column here we've basically got cards that prevent damage, or cards that get rid of threats. So the first up we have 3 of this particular card, and this is called Prismatic Strands. So this prevents all damage that sources of a colour of your choice would deal this turn. It also has flashback, and for the flashback cost of tapping an untapped white creature you control, you can play this card from the graveyard. We've got 4 Journeys to Nowheres in here. So that allows us to exile a target creature, and then when if this particular card left the battlefield for any reason, that exiled card would come back under the owner's control. And then down here we have Unmake, which is a slightly higher costed variant, I suppose. This here uses combination mana, so you can see there's the symbols there. You can do any combination of sort of all white or all black and all variants in between on that. That's Unmake. I've got one of those in the deck currently. So that just removes target creature from the game. That's it. So then in the next column here we've got our 1-drops. So here we have, there we go, Cassian Javelineers. So when that comes into play you put a counter on it, and then you can tap it, remove the counter, and do 1 damage to any target. And we've got, so there's 4 of those, and then there's 2 of these, which is the Benevolent Bodyguard. So you sack this, and target creature you control gains protection from the colour of your choice until end of turn. And obviously it can be used as a normal 1/1 there. Then we have in our sort of 2-drop slots, we have of course Skyfisher here. So it has flying. Now this is always interesting, this card. So we got a 1 and a white, which gives us a 2/3 with flying. In the ability section what it says is that when it enters the battlefield, we have to return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. So that's the downside, but that can be turned into a positive. Because we can use it to bounce cards that we want to bounce back into our hand. For instance, we might want to bounce the that Javelineer back in and then play it again to refresh its counter. The other thing you can actually do with this, which is really useful, is you can use it to bounce one of your tapped lands. So supposing you've tapped some white plains, you can sort of bounce one of those tapped plains back into your hand, and if you've not played any lands that turn, play that land and then obviously use it to get out one of your single white mana cards you might be holding in your hand. So very useful to use that for that sort of thing. So that's really sort of turning what appears to be a negative into a positive. And we've got 4, so there's 4 of those core Skyfishers, 4 Leonin Sky Hunters here. So there's another creature with flying. 2/2 for 2, basically. Then we have the Lone Missionary. So this causes you to gain life when it enters the battlefield. It's just a 2/1 for 2. And then we get on to the 4-drops. These are really interesting because both of these have suspend on them. So you have to be careful when you're evaluating these and just work out what the strengths are, because it can get quite confusing. Okay, so this in some ways is the most interesting. So with this particular suspend, okay, what it says, if we read the suspend bit first, this is suspend 3. So we can pay 1, remove this from the game, puts time counters on it, obviously, and then at the beginning of our upkeep, we take off a time counter. So eventually we're going to take them all off. When that happens, this comes into play, and it has haste. So just imagine this scenario. We've played this turn 1. Okay, we've got a plains out already. This has gone out of play, so it's been removed from the game. So then turn 4, which would be when our counters have been removed, this comes into play with haste. It's just come into play. We've not played anything else, say, on that turn, and so we've also managed to hit all our land drops. So we've got 4 plains in play. And we could tap all of those and pump this because it has the ability 1 white. It gives it 1/1 until end of turn. So if we give it, feed it with 4 white mana, suddenly we have a 5/6 on turn 4. So that's the real sort of strength with that one. This Knight of Circe also has suspend on it. There's no pumping shenanigans on this one, but what we do is we get a 2/2 with flying and flanking. Now flanking, what that does is that gives a defending creature -1/-1. So in combat situations, this is rather like having, and that's just straight combat, between 2 creatures. That would then give the opposing creature, or in effect make this a 3/3, looking at it as simply as you can. It's going to be a bit more complicated than that, but generally. So what you're doing here is you're getting a 3/3 for 3 and a white, and it has flying. But originally it only cost you 1 to cast, if you just were able to cast this first turn. So that's the big thing, only 1, but you wouldn't be able to play it till turn 4. Of course, both of these cards with suspend can be hard casted if you're playing them later in the game. In the artifact section, we have a very interesting artifact here. This is from Darksteel, Razor Golem. There's 4 of those. So this has affinity for planes. It's 6 colourless, but because of its affinity, you could get this out on, say, turn 3 if you've got all your land drops. You've got 3 planes down, so it has affinity for planes. That's going to shave off 3 colourless from the casting cost, and you can then also use those 3 planes to cast it. So you've effectively got 3/4 out on turn 3. And then finally we have artifact equipment here, which is our bone splitter. There we go. 1 to cast, 1 to equip, and it gives the equipped creature +2/+0. Very effective. I don't think there's many other common pieces of equipment that give you that bonus for that sort of relatively low casting and equip costs. I think there may be 1 or 2, but they don't quite give the same sort of combat ability. Okay, so that's the basic deck. Now, interesting cards that can be swapped out in this deck. Notice there's no sideboard, and of course that's something else which could be used to swap out things during the course of playing. But I'm just concentrating on the main deck. So in the main deck, what do we sort of commonly see change between different versions of this deck? Well, one thing is that the Knight of Circe is often swapped out with something like a Guardian of Gilpack, which is from Dissension. I don't have one of those, unfortunately. It's 3 and a white, creature spirit. It has protection from mono-coloured, and it's a 2/3. Also, you might see Knight of Circe swapped out with Avon Riftwalker from Plane of Chaos, 2 white, creature bird, something soldier. Can't read my own writing there. It has flying. It's got vanishing 3. Oh, it's sorry, creature bird rebel soldier. There we go. Flying, vanishing 3. And when it goes into play or leaves play, you gain 2 life. It's a 2/3. The vanishing 3, I suppose, is a bit like Suspend in reverse. So it comes into play. You know, you would cast it for 2 and a white. Comes into play. You put some counters on it during the course of the game. Each turn, those counters are removed. Once you remove the last one, it goes out of play. So when it comes in, when it goes out, you're going to get that 2 life. Then you've got Standard Bearer. Now that's swapped out with a number of different cards. So what people might do is just change the overall number of cards for a particular card, or several different cards, and put in Standard Bearer. So it doesn't always swap out with anything in particular. It's from Apocalypse. It's 1 and a white, creature flag bearer. The idea with it essentially is if an opponent plays a spell or ability that could target, that flag bearer, you can choose to make flag bearer the target of that spell or ability. So you're redirecting a spell or ability from one thing onto your flag bearer, onto your standard bearer. So other things on here that I do have cards for. Leonin Sky Hunter sometimes gets swapped out with Squadron Hawk. So there's our Squadron Hawk. We're probably all familiar with this as flying, and when it enters the battlefield you can search out for other Squadron Hawks in your library and put them into your hand after revealing them. I'll just put that there. Squadron Hawk sometimes will also swap out. I've seen one deck where it's swapped out with Lone Missionary as well. The Lone Missionary itself, often in similar decks, in similar White Weenie Pauper decks, gets swapped out with Sutra Priest. So this gives you life gain. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get 1 life. And whenever a creature enters the battlefield under opponent's control, that player loses 1 life. And then the other thing is the Shade of Trocchia, which was the suspend creature. I've seen decks where that's been swapped out with Core Sanctifiers. So this is a 2 and a white for a 2/3. Has a kicker of 1, and what it does, its ability basically allows you to, if obviously you've kicked it, destroy a target artifact or enchantment. So it's artifact and enchantment removal there. Okay, so that's the basic deck, and you also me just highlighting a few substitutions. Hopefully I'm going to get a chance on in the not too distant future to look at the Storm Pauper deck, the mono black, and the goblins. But what I advise you to do, if you're interested in Pauper, definitely check out that article, Introduction to Pauper on Star City Games by Alex Ullman, and have a look on the MTGO website, on Wizards' main site, and just see what the current metagame is. Like I said, it's mainly played on MTGO, but I thought it'd be interesting to build some decks that I can sort of play against each other. Anyway, thanks for watching.